Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. This is the Economic Development Committee on March 6th. We are here to talk about the incubators. As you may know, this committee has been doing quite a lot of work on incubators for the past year at this point, including doing a tour, not only with the Montgomery County incubators, but we have gone outside our jurisdiction to see how other jurisdictions are implementing them. So before we actually kick off, we have a video to show based on our last meeting. So Mr. Bolo Ali, kick it away.
Sounds good.
You're gonna tell us about the challenges and the things that we need. Don't just tell me the beautiful things. Tell me the things that you need.
Members of the Montgomery County Council's Economic Development Committee took a fact-finding tour of two of the county's innovation centers.
We're learning about the experiences of our startup companies that deal with IT, biomed, space, science, and so much more.
The tour began at the Germantown Innovation Center.
Here we primarily focus on life sciences. Primarily we have a strong biotech connection here, also have the wet labs.
The county's Innovation Network team showed spaces designed to help launch startup biotechnology companies.
All except one of the lessons with the chemical fume hood. Each of the labs has backup power, which is huge, and they're all piped with DI water, deionized water, which is a big piece for anybody that's working with life science.
Some companies are not ready yet to rent one of the large labs that we just saw right now. We call this our shared lab. For example, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 benches. Sometimes companies just want a bench to start doing their work.
The council members also heard from entrepreneurs about the challenges they face and what the county can do to further support their industries.
Educational material, how to scale up, how we can increase our visibility, how we should get connected to, venture capital or a capital group. I think those are things that could be sort of like provided in the future.
If we had shared like a core facility in terms of imaging or some state-of-the-art technology for us to use temporarily or short term to address some needs to answer FD's question, I think that would be excellent.
After a quick photo in Germantown, the tour continued at the Rockville Innovation Center, where council members saw existing spaces for technology entrepreneurs.
So this is our co-working space. We usually have it arranged with all the desks on the side. Our co-working space is for those companies that are too small yet to rent a whole office space.
Lastly, 3 more entrepreneurs shared their stories of how using the Innovation Network sites has boosted their businesses and gave tips on how to attract more entrepreneurs to the county's business incubators.
We started with just a desk in the co-working space, but over the years, our company grew. Right now we have 4 desks and an office, developing the next generation of our product and growing the sales and marketing for the existing product. So that's our focus.
Based on our interaction with the county and RIC, we get a lot of resources and then introduction to a lot of the services like CPAs and law firms. So that was very useful.
If you wanted to bring in more of people like me, the way to do it, the tools that I mentioned for building electronics are prohibitively expensive for small companies. I'm hoping to grow my business to the point where I can afford those tools. But at this point, I just can't.
We learned that in Montgomery County, we still have a big need of providing more technical assistance, providing more marketing support for these companies, and really connecting the dots to help them move to the next level. The fact that we have the committee here and the Montgomery County Council is taking a look at this issue speaks loudly that we are taking every step to become the #1 place in the nation for life sciences.
Reporting in Montgomery County, I'm Joseph Thompson.
It's like I was there.
Thank you so much to the communications team from the County Council for being there with us. Your work is very appreciated. The entire effort has been done in conjunction with the County Executive's Office. And it shows the partnership that we do have in Montgomery County as a government to move us forward. With that, I'm going to ask Council staff, Mr. Ali, to please proceed with his report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is another one of the FY25 budget follow-ups. It's an opportunity to look into the performance of various budgets under your jurisdiction to date, and then also maybe understand, ways to reprogram in FY26 and get ideas ahead of the budget. This is slightly more focused on the menu of options for growing incubators. As you can see, starting on page 3, there's relatively, there's some information about what they've been doing, but it's a lot of business as usual. You can see the trends there, and I know the county executives staff are here to speak to some of this. They also provided a little bit of an overview of each of the innovation centers, which is provided on page 2, but of course you just saw that in the videos as well. Just to revisit last year's budget discussion, ultimately, the council approved $2.4 million to support the 4 incubator centers as they exist, and there was also $3 million approved for the incubator CIP for upgrades there. There was a proposal for an innovation center contractor and a new innovation manager position. And the description of that proposal is provided on page 3 and on page 4. Ultimately, it was not approved, although there was robust discussion about why this is potentially useful, moving towards a third party, acknowledging that there are certain gaps within the innovation center network today that could be potentially enhanced or addressed with this proposal. Ultimately, the committee did not approve it, and the council didn't approve it, in part because the funding was characterized as a shift from MCEDC. And so it's provided a little bit of explanation on the background of that discussion. But again, if the committee were to receive a similar proposal, you may also want to sort of dig in with a few more questions that I've sort of laid out here, just in anticipation of another budget request with a similar concept, just sort of fleshing out a little bit more the types of contractors that may provide this, knowing that there are sensitivities around the procurement process, case studies of the types of work that they do, just to get a better handle on the proposal. Broadly, and we'll sort of talk a little bit about why a third party type organization or entity is useful in managing an innovation network. There may be an outstanding question of can you utilize existing third party structures that exist within county government, and MCEDC is such a structure. So maybe trying to understand some of the trade-offs of repurposing what the county already has versus entering into a new partnership. And there are also some questions from our esteemed expert at Marguerite Strategies, Ms. Sarah Miller, about other ways to maybe evaluate the proposal if it resurfaces for FY26. OLO, the Office of Legislative Oversight, and Ms. Latham here have provided a very detailed overview of the incubator network. And so now I'll just turn it over to their staff to walk through some of the definitions that they uncovered in their research about best practices for incubators.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez asked OLO to do a report that kind of looked at best practices for business incubation kind of across the nation. And overall, I found that there is no one definition. There are many, many examples of what incubation can look like. There are, however, 4 kind of overall components of what best practices in incubation and what an incubator looks like. There's the infrastructure of the incubator, whether that means lab space, office space, whether it's subsidized or low rent. It kind of, again, it varies across what type of incubator you want and who is administering that incubator. The second is providing business services. So a lot of times you hear that these folks, especially in the tech field, are really smart at the science. But the HR, the financing, the legal things, the accounting, the marketing, they just don't have the expertise or the time to kind of worry about those things. So a lot of incubators will provide an array of these services. Thirdly is financing, whether that means access to a network of venture capitalists or help with, connecting with grant opportunities or providing your own financial support. Again, varies by incubator. And then lastly is kind of and what I found is the most important part of it all is people connectivity. It's the networking, it's the relationships you have with other entrepreneurs, it's with experts in the field, it's with the business support services, it's with the lawyers and the accountants, and it's also with the financial connections. That's kind of the overall big picture kind of pieces.
So we're just going to continue moving on through the staff pack and then we'll turn to the next section. But just briefly, OLO also provided an overview of different models of incubators. You can see on page 7. Naturally, our county's economic development incubators are really local economic development incubators. Obviously, there is the presence of significant biotech companies. The industry is, here, obviously. So there's how you enhance these services to maybe resemble something more akin to an academic or a scientific incubators. And maybe there are aspects of those more advanced incubators that can be incorporated into the local innovation network as it exists today. And in fact, that's pretty much the subject of the rest of the staff report. There is a summary of all the quote unquote recommendations starting on page 11 and going on to page 12 with a little of the detail fleshed out prior to that. Basically, this is a relatively open list of possibilities for all of your consideration. Some of them are easier to maybe implement through legislation or funding. Some would require maybe more research, but this is an opportunity for the economic development committee to maybe recommend where executive or council staff focus their time in terms of coming up with proposals. Broadly speaking, there's probably a need for a more comprehensive strategy that can maybe prioritize and sort of put a timeline to some of these activities. But short of that, and in the meantime, there may be elements here that you think are worthwhile to explore. And so this is an opportunity to hear what those things could be. And many of these things are things that you've heard in the past. And I'll just say these ideas come from our economic development consultant, Margaret Strategies. And so we'll sort of trade off here as we work through this list. I'm just going to read off from the bullets and then Ms. Miller will sort of explain some of the details of these ideas. Ready? I think we're going to, and then by the way, we also have slides from the executive staff. So we'll always return to that after the staff report. Sorry. Okay.
Checking though.
Yeah. All right. So the first topic is sort of increasing and enhancing infrastructure. And the first two sub-bullets under there are related to increasing the amount of wet lab space, whether that's directly managed or working with private property owners to create smaller wet lab spaces.
Sure. And just to say that for the infrastructure piece in particular, there have been yes, I'm sorry, Sarah Miller with Margrave Strategies, but also have worked at MCEDC and at the county for a long time. And so have been part of many of these studies related to infrastructure, related to entrepreneurship and small businesses in general. And so as Bilal said, many of these recommendations or thoughts are not necessarily new, but it's something I think every year as you look at the budget and you prioritize things for the county, take a look at them and see if they are still relevant. Again, thinking about infrastructure, obviously the Germantown incubator and the work that has been put into that to repurpose some of the offices into wet lab space. Small wet lab space has always been a challenge. And so one of the things that at MCEDC before we had thought about a little bit was, are there ways that we could use some of the larger wet lab space and kind of divide it? And obviously that's really, really expensive, but we also know from our biolab pilot project and some other projects that really small space is what is important. And so I just, think about, again, the environment here now. Obviously this year it's a little bit different. And so we have a lot of unknowns related to funding for our businesses. And we also have a lot of changes that have happened in terms of where do we put our limited resources in terms of incubator space. And so perhaps now that the hybrid is such a prominent feature of things, do we kind of think about shifting our priorities into those really high price, high cost wet labs, but also, can I go into the other, not just wet lab space, but also some of our kitchen incubator space. And even I would say even some agricultural space, because although that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure on it, it's very, very expensive here in Montgomery County. And so thinking, as Bilal said, about entrepreneurship in general, and then having the incubator and the infrastructure piece be a tool to get us where we want to go is just something to consider. Obviously, flex space for manufacturing and things of that nature are also important. I think that's probably a tale for another time related to small scale manufacturing and kind of can we, through zoning and other things, have small scale manufacture happening in other places that are not just low slung flex space buildings.
The next topic is really product development and commercialization. And just to be clear, a lot of these elements were touched upon by executive staff in their proposal for FY25. But certainly why this is a good idea, Ms. Miller can explain.
Sure. And again, so product development and commercialization, I think we also broke out in the memo access to capital. And I kind of think of access to capital as a piece of the bigger product development and commercialization. But obviously in the county, but also in the region, we have extensive expertise, particularly in biohealth. And so one of the things that we wanted to think about is there a way to, whether a third party is coming in to manage the incubators from somewhere else or not, is there a way to kind of harness all of this knowledge that is in the region generally? And it is also, it's not just biohealth in Montgomery County and in the greater DMV, but also there's a lot of knowledge even, in Northern Virginia. We can't be afraid to, go across the river to say, like, there are people who know about cyber, there are people who know about other things. There's a lot of quantum happening in College Park. And how do we access all of that knowledge to help build entrepreneurship? And so, so that's a piece of this. So I just would not want us to forget all of the good things that we have in this region. I think paying for dedicated one-on-one expertise is very important. It's very, very expensive to sometimes get experts in regulatory or law or things of that nature. And so one of the things I would encourage people to do is to take a look at, we did something with BHI, it was BHI in the county, funding for, bless you, providing funding for executives. I think we call them executives in residence. And it was really one-on-one help that is costly. And so I would encourage us to go back and take a look at some of the outcomes of those interactions and to see if that's something that we might want to do as well. Again, not infrastructure intensive, but also is something that I think is rare for communities to provide for their entrepreneurs. Capital, do we want to?
Let me just make one more point under this product development and commercialization, which is, as you know, the Jobs Initiative created three funds, but two of them reviewed applications for projects that need financial support for their commercialization of their work. And so those applications were received and are actively being reviewed, and Ms. Costello and Ms. Hartman have been coordinating a lot of that. I've had the privilege of being a part of some of the review with FedTech, the consultant, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on Monday. But one idea was maybe to the extent that there's really valuable data about what the commercialization needs are of local businesses, it would be useful to maybe study those comprehensively and understand maybe are there new ideas coming out of that, and perhaps they can speak to an effort to do that after the applications are reviewed. And then access to capital, the Margrave strategy is also recommended, researching the possibility of partnering with investors to provide access to capital.
Yeah, and that's nothing new. I mean, a lot of places, obviously, every entrepreneur is looking for either customers, right, or capital. And one of the things that we have found there's both a group in LA and then also in New York City through the New York City Economic Development Corporation, based on LA's program, which is looking at investors locally that really want to make a commitment to address really abysmal numbers in terms of investing locally in particularly women and entrepreneurs of color. And so in addition to getting those investors engaged with some seed money, New York City Economic Development Corporation used 40 million, and this is just some particulars for you, and we can get you more information, but they had a $40 million allocation of their own budget, and they partnered with different fund managers. They put out essentially an RFP, and they've done this a few rounds to engage with fund managers locally, and they would invest, and the Economic Development Corporation invest $1 to $7 million in each of these fund managers. And the fund managers then obviously were chosen because their goals aligned with New York Economic Development Corporation, but they also were well regarded. So it's not just someone, a fly-by-night organization, but also they had priority and experience with emerging industry sectors. So they, for instance, they did life sciences, they did green tech, they did offshore wind. So any of those types of technologies that they were trying to grow within New York City. The one interesting thing that I think, and when we think about any of these things, if people are coming in, and we definitely want people to come in and bring ideas, but also bring their money and also bring their connections to things. So the fund managers for this group either had to be locally based, which is fine, but you could also be from outside of New York if you committed to 3 times the investment that New York Economic Development Corporation was putting in. And so that to me, I think was really interesting, and it will be interesting to watch how that grows. Again, they've only kind of just started in the last year and a half, so it's really hard, obviously, to measure success, but you can kind of track things. And so that's something to think about as well. And then again, the New York group is based on Pledge LA, which was the originator of it, which was again a similar. They did not. Their program is not as big as New York City. They've really taken it to a whole new level. And then one other thing I think that we should talk about too is, you know, in the DMV we talked about, and this was back. I keep talking about MCEDC, but back at MCEDC we had some conversations about high net worth individuals, and a lot of this came out of actually our cybersecurity working group, which were entrepreneurs in cybersecurity locally, and thinking about the ways that high net worth individuals in the DMV might want to invest in companies and might want to invest in things for the first time. And so how do you really kind of delicately, quietly kind of get in touch with those folks? And it is not having, you know, an event where we're like, bunch of wealthy people come and meet and we'll talk about this. Like it has to be a very like word of mouth kind of situation. And so that's just something else that, you know, I don't know that that is like the government's role to do that, but it certainly is something that is necessary. We certainly have a lot of people here who I think would be interested in helping a wide range from folks who are who had expressed interest in looking at companies that were addressing specific diseases that may have affected people personally, to people who wanted to help tech businesses that were run by women. And so again, that piece goes back a little bit to what Bilal had said earlier about, do you need kind of this third party entity that's kind of looking at entrepreneurship broadly? Which I think the answer is yes. But it has to be someone or a team really that's dedicated to kind of looking at all of these parts. That's it. Oh, yeah, sure. So yes, sorry. So one of the things we also did, and this was just like obviously in the last 10 days or so, with the federal workers and challenges there. So I think, you know, there are kind of 2 ways we could think about helping those folks, particularly with entrepreneurship. So obviously one is helping folks think about things and their expertise in new ways, and maybe thinking about how they could turn their expertise into something entrepreneurial, but then also thinking about all of the folks that we have. Again, like I was thinking about like the seed office at NIH and all of those experts there that are contracted through BHI. And again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but again, those are some resources for people who could help mentor. So it's both helping people reimagine their careers perhaps, but then also having people who are used to helping entrepreneurs in the capacity of the federal government that may not doing that currently.
Cool. So I think with that, that's pretty much the staff packet. And so now we can turn it over to the slides from the executive staff. And there's also a video at the end if you want to just, you don't, let me know if you want
Short
video.
We can play it. Do you, Mr. Stoll, do you want to play it now or at the end?
At the end.
At the end. Okay, so Mr. Ken Hartman Espada.
Thank you so much, Chair Fanny Gonzalez. For the record, my name is Ken Hartman Espada, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. Really appreciate spending time with the committee over the last year to dive into the innovation ecosystem. Some people ask, what is that? Well, it's as Sarah Miller pointed out, it is an integrated system, private, public, involves many actors in our community, actors that aren't in our community yet that we want to bring to our community. But the idea is to support innovation entrepreneurs in taking ideas, creating companies, taking products to market, and ultimately adding to the vibrancy of our local economy. I really want to make sure you know, I'm not the expert here at this table. I have experts with me, Judy Costello, Special Projects Manager, and Jane Smith, Business Center Manager, who have done tremendous work, and I've grown to greatly respect their contributions and leadership in this effort. And I also recognize that both the executive and council have long supported these investments in our local economy through the county operating incubators. And I want to express my appreciation to the Business Center team. In the same service, in years of same services in environments, they've managed to improve the occupancy, and as you saw firsthand, improve the vibrancy of our incubators, but they can only go so far in the current model, which is why we greatly appreciate the chance to tour with you regional innovation centers and to see our own innovation centers. And I feel that we've demonstrated, and I appreciate the council staff's presentation, that these incubators provide critical supports to our early stage startups and represent an investment in the growth of our local economy. And in this current environment, that is needed more than ever, especially if we see reductions in our federal sector. We need to grow our other assets beyond where they are today. The administration this year, it's not a surprise, we'll be seeking your support for additional investments to grow our local innovation ecosystem. The needs we articulated last year remain. We need a more nimble, integrated approach to innovation. We believe a cornerstone of that is to recruit a nationally known, recognized, with a track record provider who can help us operate the 3 centers, connect with the resources and that our tenants need, that our broader community needs, and also help us make those inroads with the financing opportunities that are out there that we need to also grow. And I appreciate the partnership with the council. I'm going to turn it to Gene Smith to talk about our current incubators, although I don't know how much he has to do given the council staff packet and the committee's tours, but I'll turn it to him for the next few slides.
Sure. Thank you. Gene Smith, manager of the Montgomery County Business Center. So we've heard a little bit about our current existing facilities, but again, for those watching at home or those unfamiliar, we do have 3 innovation centers right now: Germantown, Rockville, and Silver Spring. On the slide, we can see a little bit about their current square footage and the number of businesses there. I will highlight, though, we did have a couple weeks ago a conversation about the capital improvements program, where there's $3 million that the council's already approved for infrastructure investments, which speak to a lot of what we've already heard from council staff and from Margraves in terms of investment in infrastructure. So looking at smaller wet lab, shared equipment, and as well as the video showed some of the shared office space or the co-working space at Rockville needs updating in order to manage it in line with what folks and what businesses see as shared office or co-working space. But again, I think we've talked enough about the 3 incubators so far, so I'll go ahead and Judy's going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the new spaces we've added in the last year.
Sure. Just this week, as of today, someone's over at 6116, the same building that the new University of Maryland Institute for Health Computing is in. We worked starting last year to get the only available space there to host a county AI innovation center. We did not come to you for a supplemental because we negotiated very hard to get a sublease to see whether the interest that we kept hearing from companies working in AI and health, as well as AI and other sectors, was really true. So we got that lease a month or so ago, and we've been working to wire and get the access. I have a meeting tomorrow to figure out the best permanent space, but already, I don't know if you can see there, it has co-working and closed offices. The 3 closed offices in the back were immediately spoken for. There are little white signs there. We have 3 companies that have already committed to move in 2 weeks and others. one learning that we found is that in the AI world, while we thought, well, they would like affordable, flexible co-working space, a lot of it's trade secret. They all want to be behind a locked door. And so we would have more people committed if we have locked doors. So much to our great Department of General Services conservation, we are pivoting a little bit our request. And we're trying to see if there is space there. It may make sense to put it nearby because that building is full and we don't want to overpay for space, but we're working through that. I think the important thing is, in addition to the need and demand that you all saw personally and that we know exists for our existing county incubator, as the world is going to AI, as we are leveraging our investment at the Institute for Health Computing, there is an opportunity to develop a cluster of companies who want to be near the Institute's AI experts and who want to be near each other. We talked to them about, hey, there's a little extra space in Germantown. They don't want that. They want to be right. Sorry. Germantown is a great place. It's the proximity next to the Institute for Health Computing. I work from Germantown because it is a great place to work for periodically.
Thank you.
But it's being next to the Institute for Health Computing. So that is a move we are seeking going forward. In our budget request, we don't anticipate this being a substantial amount more money, but we would incorporate it into the innovation network. And where there are experts speaking to AI and business, they will be available to anybody in the network, whether it's AI and pharma working in Germantown, or whether it's an IoT company or someone working on space in Silver Spring. And we also are working on partnerships. By the way, we work with our academic partners at Montgomery College, clearly in Germantown, and the University of Maryland system in general. But we've specifically been speaking not only to the AI experts from College Park and the medical experts at UMB who are tied to the Institute for Health Computing, but to the Smith School, which has successfully run a program for AI and small business across industry sectors in Prince George's County. We're talking to them about bringing it and locating it near this AI Innovation Center and making it available to, for free, the county small businesses. So that gets to, I'm jumping ahead, that gets to program and services, but it's all tied together as Jean and council staff have alluded. The one other thing I know, thank you, council, for your appropriation last year and commitment to the Henry Jackson Foundation. I spoke with them as recently as earlier this week. They are moving ahead with the lab and office projects, small labs and offices that you helped see under the brand of HJ Innovation at Montgomery County. That is a pilot innovation lab project for them, for their facilities around the world. They expect to start accepting residence applications for their lab and office space in another month or two, and to have that space open in the fall. However, we have not waited to start leveraging that. And the couple pictures you see here, the head of the Henry Jackson Foundation, the county executive, and I think some council staff may have been part of the first two networking and information sharing. This networking pictures that you see had a full room there, focus of biotech companies from the county and Ms. Miller from throughout the region who wanted to learn about the FDA regulatory expertise and had the opportunity to hear in general and then have custom one-on-one. Those are the kinds of things we want to offer more of with some more support, not only at Henry Jackson, but also throughout the county and throughout the year. I'll turn it back to.
All right. So I'm going to share a little bit of what we've done the last year, kind of where we're at, and then Ms. Casello and Mr. Harmon will share about where we're headed or where we'd like to head with council support and within general of where we're going. So as you heard, we have the three innovation centers that the county owns and operates. And so a substantial amount of our money is just to keep upkeep. The Department of General Services doesn't upkeep those. The county does it through the business center with a JLL contract. And so about $1 million each year is just supporting the upkeep of these three facilities. And certainly as facilities grow or spaces grow, that's part of the equation. I would say the three things that Ms. Costello asked me to do as I came on as the business center manager was to increase occupancy, more tenants. And so we have two staff. You saw them in the previous video, Alicia Chavez and Richard Cisneros, who have been doing a lot of the prospecting along with my team. Are the business center elsewhere. We get some referrals through the county executive's office. A lot of them have come through the state through the Global Gateway program. And most of them, the team has been able to grow the number of tenants we have or the number of members we have in the Innovation Center. And I'm proud to say that Silver Spring, which had been below 50% occupancy well before, is increasing. We're getting closer to the 75-80% mark this year, and we're hopefully going to get closer to the 90% mark in 2025. And so that was one of the things that I was asked to handle, and that's one of the areas we've been focused on. I wouldn't say that's a lot of the conversation I think this committee wants to have, but the reality is just attracting businesses and being able to help them grow has been something that the team had been focused on. Another area that Ms. Costello asked us to focus on was just programming. We started. Some of it was due to COVID and other things. There was almost zero programming happening at the incubators, one-offs here and there. Both, again, the great program managers we have on the team did 29 programs last year. A lot of them were basic stuff. So once a month, there was peer-to-peer conversations happening. So connecting some with the networking connections and collaboration, just giving the actual members a chance to get to know each other better than they had. Some of them were more, and I know Ms. Balcom or Councilman Balcom will hate this, some of them were just more traditional lunch and learns, but nonetheless trying to reinvigorate some synergies and some opportunities there, and some training that wasn't happening. And so that was one of the things the team has done. But certainly as we hear, what they're not able to always provide is some of the technical expertise, some of the more one-on-one training that needs to occur, because as the program manager, the other thing we were dealing with is just the day-to-day management of space. They spend a lot of their time just working with each tenant just to make sure their needs are met, as well as any other things that come up. And so that is kind of where we're at. As you can see in the chart that was in the Office of Legislative Oversight report and in the council staff report, I believe we've increased a lot of our numbers. We didn't have as many graduates last year, but sometimes that's a business cycle issue as opposed to an operational issue. With that, I think we'll go on to the next slide.
And I will say with space, it's literally the licenses and the license agreements. And as you know, it's not just, there's a lot more paperwork and stuff that for basically 60 to 80 tenants at any one time, some of whom you're graduating, some of whom you're accepting. And this relates to why it may or may not help to have a third party who's able to do some of this contracting a little more nimbly. Because at the end of the day, the risk assurance requirements, some of the procurement and vendor requirements are required for us to host any company as a tenant, no matter how quickly we want to onboard them, et cetera.
Last year, we talked a lot about the objectives, the steps we need to take to strengthen our innovation ecosystem. We talked about the need to bring more entrepreneurs into the system, supporting them from idea generation to long-term growth, removing the barriers and creating pathways for success. We talked about the number and effectiveness of our current resources and growing those resources to support the needs of entrepreneurs within the system directly and through partnerships. Thanks to the council's support, and we'll talk about this more Monday. And Mr. Bilal was part of the review of the great response to the innovation grant program. There are entrepreneurs out there who are looking to get products to market and are looking for support to do that. We also talked about the number and strength of our connections between the entrepreneurs and between entrepreneurs and resources through networking, through direct contacts and programming. And we talked about the connections within our ecosystem and within the region and nation to raise the awareness of what we're doing, to improve the connections we have with others. You saw innovation centers that had connections with higher education, for example. And that's certainly something that is on our mind as we move forward. It's no secret, and I think we all agree that promoting and supporting entrepreneurship is a pathway to economic independence. As we've talked about what's happening with the federal workforce, we've had conversations about how do we promote business creation as a pathway for folks who are transitioning out of federal service. if we can move to the next slide. I think last year we saw, I don't want to go over this because you did this so well in the video. But I think what we accomplished was a shared understanding of the needs that we have to grow our supports for our entrepreneurs. And what we saw in many of the regional facilities was the responsiveness and nimbleness of third-party operators. I'm trying to remember, I don't believe any of the facilities we saw were government operated. They were all
university run, private sector run, and nonprofit at Frederick, but they were supported by a $9 million federal grant as well as ongoing government funding.
So what we saw was what's possible, and which is what we want to achieve moving forward. Mr. Smith talked earlier about the needs to continue to leverage our facilities with smaller, flexible labs, shared equipment, providing technical assistance and more robust programming, launching regular networking, education, and technology events, and connecting tenants with other resources, academic, private sector, nonprofit, and more. And in the last year, it gave us an opportunity not only to work with you, but to continue our research into the best options to address this need. So what's needed and what you'll see, what you may see, because I don't want to break protocol, but I don't think it's clear. I don't think it's a secret that that the administration and the council have a shared desire to achieve the goals we've laid out with proven effective actions by increasing the use and effectiveness of our county-owned incubators to provide that more robust programming, education, and networking, and provide that targeted technical support, and to establish those partnerships I talked about a minute ago. I think what we haven't said, which is underlying all of this, is throughout this entire effort, in our minds, how do we create more access for historically underrepresented communities and entrepreneurs? How do we get people into entrepreneurship and remove the barriers in front of them? Anything you want to add, Judy, to that?
I think we've covered the demand and the fact that we've looked at various ways to provide it. The main thing is we're working as hard as we can at the county. We think that to get it up to the next level, we need extra support. We could have come in and asked for a lot more money for county government, for other government related partners, but we think the way to make the best use of the county's money is to bring in folks who do this all the time and nothing else, and not just facility management and not just programming, but everything. And I think we feel that will best address what we've all already talked about several times and identified as the needs.
Thank you, Judy. And I know Judy talked earlier about the International Soft Landing Program. We do have a need in this process to formalize that, how that works. I know we have referrals from international trips. MCDC makes referrals in, and others make referrals in, but through this process, it's not lost on us that there's a need to include a formalization of that process through this effort.
And what that means is, as with any of these programs, it's having someone who has the bandwidth and capacity and expertise to leverage a program. For example, how do you get through FDA? The people we visit in Korea, in Taiwan, any place around the world have many of the same questions that our residents and businesses in Germantown and Silver Spring and Bethesda have. And so if you have a webinar and a networking event, a group that does this regularly can provide in-person networking for us here, but can also make it available to networks in other countries. We have been asked for that. We communicate with accelerators through our international trade missions, and they want that type of information. And in the Rockville Innovation Center in particular, just because of its central location near a metro and restaurants for people from overseas who haven't yet purchased a home. And they're putting their toe in the water. They're very interested in being in Rockville. I think we have the numbers, but I think it was something like 90% of individual, and they will do co-working space. People who want to come in have come into us from international through the Global Gateway Program, Mr. Hartman referenced, where their first year's participation in the Innovation Center is covered by the Maryland Department of Commerce.
Dejan.
And as of last week, as a follow-up to Mr. Glass's and Mr. Madaleno's beginning of relationship building with our sister city in Dejan in the fall of 2023, and our travel there last year. They visited here last year. We traveled back to sign an economic development agreement, and they just came over on short notice last Monday and opened an office in the Rockville Innovation Center, their first City of Dejan International Trade Office. They immediately took the last remaining space. We have a wait list at Rockville Innovation Center. The assistant mayor flew in for hours and flew out to see it and said, we gave him an office and he wanted a room this size. He said, I want to bring companies here. That was last Monday. I think 2 days ago, we had a visitor from Dejan come in with another company. He's up at I know we visited Germantown today and met where we have 3 Korean American companies working in wet lab space, and he's looking at opening an office here. So that's a little bit of a side, but it's definitely related. It's part of the demand and part of the opportunity for each of these companies, no matter where their investment is coming from. Our hope is that they'll grow jobs for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial staff here. And if it's people who have been working for the federal government, that's an opportunity too. So the innovation centers are a supported, affordable way for overseas companies to join our community, and they value our highly diverse and educated workforce. And the same services we provide them would be welcomed by those who are longtime Montgomery County residents.
Beautiful. Should we watch your video for?
Yes, this video we found posted late last night, and it's just a quick clip from Montgomery College, courtesy Montgomery College. It's now public. And this, you met her, Miss Dagger. She was on your video. Unsolicited testimonial we saw last night and seen for the second time here.
Being part of the Germantown Innovation Center really allows or provide an opportunity for many scientists that have novel idea and innovation to get together and collaborate with each other. Opens lots of doors for a startup to brainstorm, collaborate, and, build the infrastructure to go to the next level and grow.
Thank you. With that collaboration, with that connection, with all the variables that GIC provides, what do you see for the future? What's the innovative on the horizon for PMC Diagnostics?
To make it really short is to, bring precision medicine tool at the population scale. We want to make it affordable. We want to make these tools and diagnostic tools and prevention tools available for every individual. And make it accessible for them. In order to meet that goal, there are layers of, activities that we are doing on daily basis. One of them is to improve our technology to address all those limitations and shortages that we have and currently facing in clinical realm. The other thing that we are doing to really scale up is to incorporate AI technology. And what I mean by that, we do use AI technology to do the interpretation of the test results that we do. We use AI technology to look at the other factors that can contribute to human disease, such as environmental factors and lifestyle modifiers that can contribute to all those human disease.
Wow, Dr. Dagger, I think about that, leveraging current technology, enhancing kind of future technology, all in the vein of ensuring that there's affordable, accessible, equitable, kind of opportunities to address major healthcare issues. Dr. Dagger, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an
That was great. That's a new chat. And by the way, she referenced AI and technology. So one of our companies in Germantown wants to keep their office in Germantown and also take a co-working space at the AI Innovation Center so they can be closer. I mean, it's not that far from the AI, but so they're willing to pay for two different things of office space, which shows the need to, it's not just about the space. That gets to our budget request. It's about the programming and the experts. We want to bring in more AI experts as well as more pharma experts, as well as people in other industry sectors.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think there's a lot of things that we can say that from the council, from Olo, from the county executives team, they are all in conjunction. They're all complement each other, and it speaks highly of this entire effort. Before I open it up to questions, I will imagine all of us, right? And I cannot wait for March 14th to see the actual budget and see how this relates to this. But the whole point of having this session is to understand and have all the background before we have the actual conversation on the budget, because it will just help us digest all the information. I also want to thank the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation for being here and for being with us during the tours that we have done. So thank you for that. I want to acknowledge that you guys are here. And can you, and I know, so we're going to be expecting in the coming budget details and a price tag on this question of the third party that council staff has brought up and you guys agreed, and having somebody specialized in legal requirements, marketing, the coaching, the one-on-one coaching, and so on and so forth. So that's great. And I love that you mentioned too, Mr. Harman Espada, the points on the international trips. I went with a county executive to Taiwan, Councilmember Glass also has been in Asia with as you mentioned before, but we need to have a strong connection and show how these trips have resulted in actual contracts and how many people have been employed, when are they gonna be placing their headquarters, and Ms. Costello, she touched on that also briefly, but we need somebody who can put all that together with one strategy. Otherwise it's just so confusing. Everybody's doing one thing and the other, and it just doesn't help. And I love that Ms. Miller touched on the need of always although we're in Montgomery County, we're better when we promote original assets. Yes, we like to compete, but we look better when we say, okay, this is what we have in Montgomery County, but we also have these amazing efforts in College Park with Quantum, and then in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, and this is why people should be looking at the DC region versus Boston or the Bay Area. That's very important. So we do need that third party expert to understand that, putting politics aside and see how we can all be collaborative. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. And with the comment of MCDC, look, I'm just gonna put it out there because why not? When we talk about the third party, I think we do need MCDC, as we had done and discussed this many times in different work sessions. You know, they need to look at the big picture, getting all these big employers coming in. This area is so specific that I do think it needs to be an independent third party agent, expert, whatever you want to call it, looking at this in specific without being distracted with anything else that we're dealing with. We have the Small Business Center that do an amazing job, and we want them to continue working with the small businesses. We have NCDC, and we want them to continue working with these big companies, attracting them to come here. But this space needs to be respected, and all of us need to help and evolve. NCDC needs to help, and the Small Business Center needs to help and evolve. So once we talk about third party, I just want to put that up there, that it needs to be a next one. With that, my friends, I'm gonna start from my what is it? Left. Council member, welcome.
Okay. Thank you. I think this was really very informative. And I so appreciate the tours that we went on this past year. It really was eye-opening, just how much we currently have in Montgomery County and where we can really improve. So I'm going to follow up first on the third-party discussion. Of course, it means we need the right third party. The innovation centers have gone kind of back and forth through their history of internal, external, and I think it just really we need to make sure that we have the right partner in there. And I think there are certainly a lot of advantages to a third party from the perspective of they're focused that every day when they wake up in the morning that they have one job, right? So I think that's important. I would say the caution would be because our system is a little bit segregated in that we have MCDC, we have the business center, we have the finance piece. There are a lot of different pieces to our economic development. And whoever that third party is has to have relationships with every party and strong working relationships, because if we go back to the concept of no wrong door, the third party has to be very cognizant of where all those other doors are. And so I think that that's just something, if we move forward in this direction, I will be looking at that to make sure that that's in place. And then from the, from what we have and what we need part, it was so apparent in our tours of our competing or companion
our neighbors
our neighbors to the north and south and east and west, the programming piece. And I think that it was Frederick, I think that what really hit me was the one-on-one consulting.
Yes.
And the because there's an accountability piece tied into that, where their consultant or their liaison, the business is one person. They first off, it's just somebody to talk through all the problems with. But the accountability piece, especially for entrepreneurs who are so good at the technical aspect that very often they don't generally move to the business part of the job because either they are not interested in it, they're not good at it. And so the one-on-one consulting to me is one of the most important things that we can do. The connections are important because you want to make sure that we have all these resources in the region. I think having this regional aspect is important. And so our entrepreneurs will naturally want to connect with people. But it goes back to that one-on-one consultant will be the one to know that. So I think that's important. And I think that's the soft landing program, I think, is really important. And I appreciate the connection to our international recruitment efforts and making sure that we have someone paying attention to that. I know you do. Just one question. When we were at Germantown, we talked a lot about increasing space. I thought that there was a project already in place for that expansion. Where are we with that?
Sure. So the council did approve $1.4 million to convert 10 offices into 4 wet labs. And when you all toured them,
Right.
You saw the 4 new spaces. I think what we've been talking about is further. We need to go further. And as Ms. Miller mentioned, what we need to do is figure out how to take not just have single lab, but how do we build shared benches? So I believe it was up at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. We saw what a shared lab space looks like. It's expensive. And so that is part of the proposal in the $3 million. But certainly we would want an expert that understands what that looks like and not just have the county build shared lab and hope it works.
So, and we're looking at experts in that, and then also we've had increasing demand from some Germantown-based companies who are working in satellite and advanced manufacturing and prototyping. And we've gone up to the place that you visited, Launchport, but also a couple other facilities in Baltimore to see what, and are talking with them preliminarily about potentially having a satellite location that as part of our, not with a big expenditure would be the anticipation, but as part of making the best use of that other half of the Germantown Innovation Center, small, flexible lab space potentially. And if we confirm what we think is demand for small space where you can do 3D prototyping for a device, like I saw yesterday, where you do saliva test for diabetes, and you could do, that kind of thing, instead of sending that work outside the county, possibly doing that there for relatively inexpensive. So it's small shared, not only biotech, but as we diversify our economy and want to make sure that everything grows, that may be part of our proposal.
Which gets to the commercialization of the product, yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate you having this work session at this point in time, because I remember last year we had received the budget and there were a number of changes to the budget, both within MCEDC, but then new programs within the incubators and business center. And it was really difficult to weigh the merits and get a deep dive in real time with a large budget ask, and this tees up that budget very nicely. So appreciate that, and appreciate the observations from our lead on workforce development as well. I want to dive into some of the numbers a little bit to get some clarity, because I think we all know the importance of this work. We all know we are the third largest life sciences bio hub in the country, and glad to know that Ms. Costello, the county's work in particular overseas, is bearing fruit. We knew it needed to be planted and it needed to be tended to, but clearly it's paying off. Congratulations, that's great. And so on page 3 in the packet, there is the data about the incubator outcomes and the capital raised from 100 million to 20 million, now to 1.5 million. And the new tenants and the jobs supported. Interesting data. Can someone explain what that means in story, in narrative?
Specifically the capital raise in general, or the
all of it, because I think what is most helpful is, what does success look like? That is the overarching question that we're trying to figure out.
Sure.
And I see different numbers that could answer that, but in total, what is success and how does this support?
Happy to address. Do you want to cover first the basic?
I defer to you first, but I will talk about what I shared.
Simple question, complex answer. I get it.
Yep. So the short answer, these are the numbers based on. There's a lot behind the numbers to your question. These are the numbers based on actual tenants on site. I will go down to the bottom of the graduate. So what does success mean? So why are we even in this space?
Yeah.
The idea, I think, that everybody says is you have an idea. This is innovation, and we'll talk maybe a little bit when we talk about the founders grants next week, that there are many opportunities, as we all know, for entrepreneurs who aren't focused on innovation. But why do we support innovation like biotech? It's because it's a technology that we think will be scaled and grow jobs, but that is too novel, takes a lot of investment, and the idea is too young and early and risky for a bank to give a loan, and for venture capital give a loan, and there's no revenue coming in, certainly for biotech, till it gets through FDA and guesswork. So all those reasons, that's why we support it. So at the end of the day, success is growing jobs and having jobs in the county. For some of these, for biotechs in particular, a lot of investment and help is needed for every job. It doesn't grow jobs as quickly as a Maspanatus or something different. So, but success is typically viewed as job growth, commercialization of products. Our number 3 is based on patents and investment in capital raised by graduates. I know the 2023 figure, I believe, is DECA, whom some of you have heard about, and well, you spoke at our thing. So and talked about the value of Germantown Innovation. He's working on an oncology drug, raised 20 million in 2023. That brought him up to 60 million in investment. And maybe, I don't know the current jobs, but I think he has at least 30 people working in Germantown in a Minkoff lab. So that would be considered a success. They had an idea, a patent. What also will be success is when, and I think he's addressed this in our lab, when it's having a positive effect for patients. But from an economic development standpoint, it's jobs. There's a company, Arcellx, that I believe might be the 2022 numbers. In 2022, they went public. Some of you may have visited them. I don't know. They started in our Germantown Innovation Center and were there for a number of years and then moved to Watkins Mill. Now their headquarters, if you look on their website, you'll see, I think, Red Wing, California. However, their R&D center is at King Farm and their labs are at King Farm. And we visited them with, I think someone from MCDC was here, but the mayor of Rockville, that's technically in the city, and they are supporting jobs for 20 some people. They are in clinical trials. Ultimately, it's a CAR T technology. It also will help patients. Graduates, for the most part, should be someone who has received a benefit of more affordable space. And ideally, particularly if we bring on more bandwidth, robust programming and connections to get to the market faster with our technology innovation founders grants, get to it faster. A couple times it's a graduate because the idea is not going to work. And we've asked them to move out. Since when I came, which was right after COVID, so people had been studying for a couple of years, the majority of graduates, if I think about it, and you can have been or have been asked to move to commercial space. There's one in particular, I think, that will not be a successful business. And then it's our time to say, hey, we work for you, you're a county resident, but we need to help you move on.
Who measures that? Who says that, who tells the business, the entrepreneur, that thank you, your time is up, you've tried, right? And business has high failure rate, right? So we have to understand that, but who judges that?
So right now it is
I can answer that.
Yep.
I was gonna say, currently right now it is the business center. I work with closely with Richard and Alicia, and we consult with the county executive and the county executive's office. So we do have, for example, we do have a business in there right now that is 9 months past due on paying their license agreement. And so we've been working with them for a long time. But ultimately it's usually a conversation. Hey, listen, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're hearing, and we've been spending multiple months with you to find the resources to make the connections. But rather than renewing the license agreement, because we only do 1-year license agreement, sometimes we do shorter if the business asks us, but we're coming close to in 2 months, we're going to need to renew it or not. And so usually it's less of you're out, it's more of we don't see this as a good opportunity for us to continue to require you to pay something that you're not able to do so. And your current growth model does not suggest that's going to go there. And it's usually an amicable decision. They're like, you're right. And so we work with them to find what's the next step after they leave. But because there's no long-term commitment, we're all free to be able to say, hey, as this year comes due, what is the next step for us?
So in other words, you're saying that when a tenant is, in other words, unable to pay rent, it shows a distress on the business and that you're then engaging in the.
And we're doing that not after, sorry, I was saying we've been doing that for 9 months. It wasn't.
No, I understand that.
Right. I apologize. I should
just trying to flip it into terminology that might be more understandable. Right.
And I should have maybe clarified this. I think we don't have tenants, they're members, because we have license agreements. It's just a helpful terminology piece, but I understand how we all slide into that. And even I do that sometimes, but just for the public's good and the public understanding, they're members of our network through license agreements, not paying rent or tenants.
Understood.
I want to add to what Judy and Jean, Councilmember Glass. So when we talked last year, we talked about the metrics, the jobs created, the revenue generated, capital raised, the private equity investment, the sales growth. patents, commercialization. There are lots of ways to measure the success of an innovation center. Your other question was, why is this important? For an economic development strategy, it's everything for how do we support and nurture and connect with the companies who are here to understand their needs. How do we recruit and attract companies to come to Montgomery County and establish those relationships maybe abroad to let companies know who we are and what we offer. And a key piece of jurisdictions that have a successful strategy is what does that innovation ecosystem look like to bring entrepreneurs into the system, provide them the early supports that a company needs in a very risky place where financing and supports are needed, that gets them to capitalization and gets them to market. As you said, not everyone's going to be successful. But all of our success stories are fantastic stories. They've added definitely to our economy. They've brought in jobs and they continue to grow. But that's how I'd answer your question. Why is this important?
I would say also on the company, just picking on the company that Gene and I were just discussing, we did spend time with the company, as he alluded to, before they became pass-through and questioned the business model. Our business liaisons, in addition to program staff, our business liaisons spent time with them. I spent time with this particular company because even as a government, you could see challenges with the business model. The value of having an expert who does this day in and day out is that they would be able to focus even sooner and more in depth. And ideally, this company had been admitted before the two of us were involved. But ideally, you're still going to have, not every company a third party would bring in will be successful, but that should even enhance the success. And Councilmember Balcom and I used to sit in on as members of the Montgomery County, I think it was the Business Innovation Network a few years ago, on the recruitment committee and give opinions. A third party, we would ask not only to bring business experts as part of the vetting process on a regular business. As county government, we would rather not be making the yay or nay, despite our expertise or not, on a regular basis. And so I think that's another reason why that might be helpful.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it and very helpful. So I have two questions and they're interrelated. Is there a wait list for our incubators?
There is. So the Rockville Innovation Center, which is currently 99% occupied, has a wait list both internally for businesses that wish to grow and businesses that are interested in locating only in Rockville, because as Ms. Costello said earlier, the amenities nearby are the natural. So we're at 9 to 10 businesses on that. There is no wait list at Germantown because we still have two or three labs available and plenty of offices, and there is no wait list at Silver Spring. So it really is just Rockville.
Sure. And clearly having that information is important because it provides more context as why space is needed. And if a business is not performing or isn't succeeding based on business metrics, then we need others that want to be in there. And so looking ahead, as the budget will be introduced shortly, and I know that has not been an easy feat, ongoing still, I presume to a certain degree, not in necessarily your portfolios, but there are other moving parts as we see thousands of our neighbors losing their jobs, particularly within FDA and IH and the ecosystems around there. How do you see these programs fitting in and providing opportunities for our neighbors who have the skills and the talent, just not the space or the opportunities?
So I'll take the first crack at that. So we've begun what I think is a fantastic partnership with the county chamber, with MCEDC, with WorkSource Montgomery, and others, Rockville, Gaithersburg, and other partners in the space, because we're working towards creating that one-stop resource for people leaving federal employment. A key part of this strategy that's emerging is how do we connect with our business community to connect them with people leaving federal employment, and how do we promote business creation in all that to give people multiple paths, whether it's available jobs in the economy, connecting with highly skilled people who have been in the federal system with highly technical jobs in the private sector and making that connection, because it's not always an easy transition. But a major plank that we've talked about in our meetings, and we have another meeting tomorrow. I'd be happy to include your staff. We are gelling, and through the leadership of folks at MCDC and Angela Franco and others, and Anthony Featherstone. We have a plan, so we want to start sharing that with you. I think, in light of what's happening on the federal, I think I mentioned earlier, there is no better time than today, than in this budget, to really look hard at our business supports, whether it's attraction and retention, or whether it's assisting entrepreneurs, because those entrepreneurs grow into the big companies. And it's an investment. We've been eking along with a budget for the last 10 years, and I think we have an opportunity now to start something big that will get us attention for the sports we provide.
Timely conversation.
Yes.
Glad you scheduled it, Madam Chair, and I know we'll talk a lot more about it. I hope we talk more about it in the budget in the weeks to come. So thank you, and thank you for the reports that you guys have done.
Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for your commentary, the report, and Madam Chair for the timeliness. I'll echo the sentiments of my colleagues. It's so important, given our political landscape, that we remain at the forefront, especially in this sector. I know that we are very proud of being the third largest biotech in the nation, but just thinking proactively and strategically about the investments that will maximize the return on these resources that we are allocating to grow our economy and these businesses. And so I wanted to ask a few questions, and they're in order based on the packet. But I wanted to start with that clip you showed at the end from President Williams. What happened with that clip? Where did you find it? And then
I found it last night at 11 o'clock when I should have been asleep. On LinkedIn. It apparently he has a new bow chat video series. It was the first. It was the bow tie.
I like bow ties.
Yes.
and what did you do with that clip?
What did I do? So I barely had any time, but I couldn't stop myself. I said, Montgomery County government is proud to have, and I referenced the company up at Germantown where they can interact with MC students and faculty. I heard you're visiting maybe up there next week, by the way, so we could talk offline. But so, and I haven't had time to follow up with the team that did that to ask them to help us. But it was the first I saw it, but I don't even know how I saw it, but that's exactly.
It's on your LinkedIn. Is that what?
Oh, well, good. I want to make sure that we are retweeting it. And I don't know if we're coming up with any hashtags about our incubator or our biotech corridor. I just want us to be more intentional. We have this OLO report. We have the help of Margraves. I'm not sure what the next fiscal year is going to look like, but we have these recommendations. And so I just want to ensure that we're maximizing and proactively thinking about how we're going to utilize every aspect of these folks.
Spreading the word,
Yeah.
talk about our success stories. And
Exactly.
I completely agree.
Yes. And so, I also, you spoke about the third party and who's potentially going to streamline all of these efforts and put a plan together to basically oversee this sector. Do we know if we have, are we going to see something in the budget when the county executive releases it about what that RFP or the scope would look like? If there's going to be money in the budget to support this strategic plan and then someone to execute the plan?
I think I may have already let the cat out of the bag that broken protocol.
It's already out.
There will be something in the budget. I'm happy to have, we would like to offer either individual or less, because we are talking about a contract and potential contractors, so maybe there's another format we can use.
Yes, definitely. Okay, good. And then, I know that we met a few of our members in the incubators. Do we have demographics on the businesses who are occupying these spaces?
Yeah, yes, we do collect that.
Oh, okay. All right, if we can get that information.
Okay.
And what you might be more interested in, that we might have to do a little digging, that's why I paused, is biotech, for example, has many more people working at various levels, including C-suite, but not necessarily the CEO. So it'd be good to know the diversity, not only in the lead of the top person, and that founder or the owner, but also of the other team members.
Definitely, the entire.
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment. So we have information on the business ownership demographics. We do not necessarily collect the information of like C-suite or employees like we do for any business, but certainly we all know them really well. And so we could certainly work with them. So to Ms. Casella's point, the broader demographics may take time, but we certainly share the ownership demographics.
That would be helpful. And then I think one of my colleagues may have answered this, but how do we measure the overall impact of the incubators? When I was looking at the chart and I saw 5 of those incubators generated 100 million. Now I see we have even more incubators, only 1 that's generating investments after they leave. And so I'm wondering if there are any contingencies that we put into our relationships with these incubators. Are they required to get space after they outgrow this space? Do we get a percentage, or do we have any invested interest in, their proprietary information that they create while in our incubator? And so I'm just wondering what the long-term investment is, or if we just grow them, kick them out, and they make money. We talk about the money they make, and then we have nothing to show for it once they're gone.
So, so the first answer is no, the county does not take any stake in the growth of our businesses in terms of their intellectual property or kind of what happens afterwards. We're not, like, the county is not invested in the economic development of our ecosystem in that manner. Like, we provide the space, the programming, the connections, even though we would like to see them be more robust. But certainly if the business growth is such that a business such as DECA graduates, we help them find space, we help them stay in the county. That is the goal, is that the job stays in the county. But certainly the county does not have any ownership or take of their IP or their growth beyond the benefit of having another great business in the county. I would just add, given I would also say, given the table that, and I think this was produced by OLO from the data we gave, I would also say, like, this is like facility level data, like that's a way to look at it. Certainly if we have a different way to approach success, that would be different level data, but and I'm sorry, I'm looking at whatever this page is in the packet on page 3. I would divide a line under new tenants. If I were making this table, only because the job supported by tenants, the graduates, and the capital raised is outside of our control. And even if you have a third party doing it, it's outside of their control. That is the business cycle, that is business growth, that is just some of risk that comes to making business. And that's why you see fluctuations. We don't know how fast businesses are going to graduate, but I think using Mr. Glass's terminology of cultivating, we want to see the ecosystem be able to help businesses grow as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, or, and I think this is fine to say, fail as quickly as possible, because that way they're not investing 10 years of their time and life into a product that's never going to come to commercialization. And so I think what I would say, maybe I'm putting on a slightly different hat here, is that in the future years, we want to see how that ecosystem is growing this better and moving these businesses along faster. It's not in all of our control. But no, to answer your question, this data is kind of showing how we've grown the facilities to be able to take more tenants, more members, more growth from that angle, but because that's what we have control over. Our team does have control over prospects and how do we get businesses in the door and how do we work with them that are here. I would say the rest of that table shows what could happen and what's possible.
Yes,
About the
after
ecosystem.
they work with us.
Yeah.
And no, I think it's a good testimonial almost, but are there other jurisdictions who do have that sort of relationship with their incubators where they are taking a claim, a stake?
So I can tell you, just anecdotally from my experience through the years, when you're an early stage company and raising money and you finally get to the point where you can have a venture capitalist, something, many investors do not want to deal with whether it's county government or crowd sourcing investors. They want what they call a clean cap table, and so it's discouraged because it makes their deal and their opportunity, it's a barrier to raising investment. Though you are not the first to ask, the incubators who do take that are through the universities and their tech transfer offices. As if you probably heard the Bayh-Dole Act, I think it was, came out after Google and some others, but universities realized they let a lot of opportunity and incoming funding disappear.
But it's the universities.
Technology is different. The other thing I'll tell you is that our friends and we work with them and partner with them at the University of Maryland Institute for How Computing. We promote them and we promote the fact that they have a little incubator within their institute. We have been told by companies that they want to partner with the University of Maryland IHC. They like the fact that they have an incubator there, but would we give them separate space? Because it's easier for them to set up a partnership outside the university framework. Many of the entrepreneurs working in innovation may have taken the idea from the federal government, it might be an NIH, or from their home university, and they want to keep it under their control. So in some ways, the short answer is no, but it's for a positive reason, if that makes sense. The other thing you were asking about tracking. So one thing I do think we would ask a third party to do, again, bandwidth and resources are also part of this, is track reporting on follow-on data and when graduates graduate on a more regular multi-year basis.
Yeah.
Our current team has gone back as much as it can through the records to find out, but I can't tell you every tenant. And I sat in the Shady Grove Incubator when I was a biotech and I was working for the state in 2014. I don't know all 30 companies that were there, and I'm not sure that we have those records that are archived. I'm sure we might have a couple other people that did well that we don't know about. So reporting that, it would help with that bandwidth. And the other thing I would say is that when we've talked to successful incubators, they have had full-time staff that are salespeople, that are selling the space. As much as we talk about it, we think it's an opportunity. They're out knocking on doors and finding the best candidates. And they said they have full-time people doing that, which we don't do. That's why we take incoming and referrals and we talk about it and go out a little bit, but we don't have that focused effort. So again, where you have a focused effort, and that's part of the reporting and the prospect recruiting, I think also there could be an advantage, not for any third party, but for someone who has that and with whom the county contracts and says, this is a deliverable we want you to achieve.
How do we determine whether incubators are the most effective way to grow businesses compared to our other economic development strategies, like our grant programs, tax incentives, workforce development programs? How are we comparing them across our whole suite of offerings?
So I want to answer that by saying all of the above are important. We're here to talk about the incubators. Monday we'll be here to talk about the grant program, which is shaping up to be a very successful and enlightening program for us. But part of our recommendation last year was to create an innovation network where there is connection to our higher ed, to our private innovation centers, to our MCDC and others in the system about what measures across the board do we need to promote as ways to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. So Judy can fill in the gaps, but just from where we've been, we are trying to put in place a methodology to get us that integrated approach to draw on the expertise. It's not all in government. There's only one Judy. And
we love you.
And so this is
At all of these different buckets. We're gonna be talking about the grants on Monday. We're talking about incubators today. It would be helpful to understand what success looks like and which one is proving to be the most successful investment based on ABC.
That's a fair question, because I understand how you prioritize. I do think it is together. I was very happy and as I think you may know, this grant program that we're talking about Monday, and we'll go into the weeds, but the deadline for the grants just closed, and the data and the review process that Bilal has spent hours on with us, along with a couple CEOs from MCEDC's board and the third party team. We already, without the time to see all the data, which I'd like to do over the summer, and it won't be in time for this budget session. We already have seen what we want, that a number of our Innovation Center members applied for these grants. So when you were there, some of the people who you met have applied for the grants. And what you'll learn Monday is they didn't just apply for money, they applied, and we asked them to, they gave us a dollar amount tied to a very specific commercialization project that they said will move it forward. And I just today got numbers that I'll share on Monday in response to our questions. So we have, we're taking them at their word. How many employees do you represent? And how many employees will you have if the same thing about capital, if the project is successful? And I believe, I skimmed it very quickly, came in right before it, that those numbers are significantly higher than the Innovation Center numbers that you just saw. However, they couldn't do that project if they were not in the Innovation Center, because they couldn't afford commercial space in a 5 to 10 year commitment. So it is very intertwined. I'd also say the access to capital, which I agree, as Ms. Miller eloquently said, every entrepreneur is either looking for customers or investment or a loan. However, the majority of those that do not have customers because they have to get their product more developed can't get investment unless they have a proven prototype or unless they do FDA trials. And so bringing 20 VC companies and VC headquarters and sticking them in Montgomery County, as some have suggested might help, is not going to do the trick. It's the type of capital that we are giving them that is helpful. And I did do a high level skim of the firms recommended in the packet. That we didn't talk about that, but you might want to address. So in the founders or in the LA program, it was serving specifically by their description, Black and Latinx founders, and multi-million dollars went to 19 companies. I'll get the numbers. I'll have them by Monday so we can compare. But what I'm saying is we're leveraging. So how you measure success, is it number of companies? Is it number of future employees? Is it it's a little bit of everything. And that's the short answer to your question.
My last question, we're always looking at how we're doing compared to other regions. We went from 5 businesses graduating in 22 and 23, and 24, there was only 1. How are our graduation numbers comparing to other incubators? Are they similar? They're growing?
So I don't have the exact stats on other incubators. We did have 2 queries in the last week from one of the incubators you visited, and we've not yet figured out why. They just came in this week, actually. I do know, if you remember visiting, if I'm thinking particularly in Baltimore, those folks are going to be there for the most part for a couple of years. I imagine we are about the same. I don't have those stats, and we might be able to get them, probably not within the next week, but we might be able to get them. It's a good question, though. Again, we're a little bit chicken and eggs. since I was with you, we visited Johns Hopkins, but I visited the University of Maryland. Oh, you visited the construction site. That is now open. It was something like $15 million for that one floor, for one floor of labs. And the companies that are there have to pay above our market, maybe by twice rate. They have to have a lot more money there further ahead, and they are gonna be there for a couple of years. So if I went up to them and asked them for graduation rate, we might be ahead of them because it's just the nature of the beast. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this very constructive session, and we look forward to more details during the budget. I just want to make sure people know that for Monday's session on March 10, it's gonna be very exciting with MCEDC and all the grants that we just referred to. We're gonna be on the second floor, okay? Because of all the construction going on in this building, just making sure people know that. With that, thank you so much for staff, and this session is adjourned.